Welcome to another episode of Raging Mouth, brought to you by Rahl Jewelers. My name is Aldo Gandia. Mike, how are you doing?
Aldo, doing great, getting a lot of good response from our other episodes. I think a lot of things are being revealed on this podcast, like you said the other day, that people haven't never heard about, never knew. And I had a guy tell me today he watched it, and he couldn't believe the Operation Push stuff, the Jesse Jackson stuff, and how it all ended up. So, been special. It's been a good time with you as always. One of the best things I ever did was hook up with you, and I say that. And I did a lot of smart things in my life, did some dumb things in my life, but this has been good, and it's been a blessing. And hopefully, this will lead on to bigger things and give people more information about how it was back in the day when it was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun and a lot of crazy hijinks.
Indeed. And let's not forget our friends over at Rahl Jewelers. None of this would be possible. We've put a lot of time and effort into researching, into production, into Mike and Bibi planning this entire thing, and that's been made possible by our friends over at Rahl Jewelers. Have you visited with them recently, Mike?
Yes, I have, my friend. And at the GAMS, Brad, Ryan, great staff, beautiful place. Wonderful jewelers. 847-765-3000, 3001 Barrington Rd, Hoffman Estates.
One of the fun things about going over to Rahl Jewelers is that both Ryan and Brad know sports really well. So while you're shopping for something, you can talk to them about the Bears, the Cubs, the White Sox. They're well versed in the world of Chicago.
They love Caleb Williams. Shocker. You know what I mean? I can't go anywhere. As you know, they're just wonderful sports fans, and he's been a friend of mine for a while now, and I probably enjoy Von Steuben, so we thank him.
Indeed. All right. You mentioned about some of the mistakes that you did in the past. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to what had to have been a very tough time in your personal life and professional life, and that was the driving under the influence incident. I frankly don't recall much of it. Can you share with us what transpired that night and what the fallout from that was?
Well, there was two of them. I also was in a couple fender benders, but there was not enough consequence of that. But the DUI, to me, the first one was I'm driving home and I got a flat tire on the Kennedy. And I kept driving till I was on the rim, practically. And I was about 20 minutes from my house, which was in Palatine, which was another thing. You're partying in downtown Chicago, and then you're driving 45 minutes back in the day. And I saw a state trooper on stopping somebody else. And when I went by, you can hear the rim. You know what I mean? I go, oh, Christ. All of a sudden, I feel I made it. And then all of a sudden, I say, ding, ding, the lights are coming. Pulls me over. And he says, you were going about 65, 70 miles an hour, and you're driving on a flat. Well, I said, I wanted to get home. I said, I didn't want to be on the side of a road. I didn't want to cause an accident, stuff like that. And I had been still playing really top-notch softball at that time. And I had pulled a hamstring. And he says, well, let's do the alphabet. I did the alphabet. He says, let's now walk 1 foot and step in front of you. I go, look, I got to pull the hamstring. I'm just telling you now. And I did it. But then he told me to stand on one leg. Okay. If I do that to 10 sober guys now, including you, 8 of us will fall down. Okay. All right. Let's be honest about it.
I know.
They're asking you to do Olympic events now, you know? And I'm going, oh, I got to pull the hamstring. So to make a long story short, I got a couple lawyers. This was back in the day. I didn't blow. And that used to be the rule. If you didn't blow, you know, they got to prove you were drunk. Now they sort of blackmail you into it. If you don't blow, we're taking your license away for 6 months. Okay. Even though you may think your rights and you didn't drink are being infringed, you better blow. Okay. Well, I didn't blow. I went to trial in Rolling Meadows. I was well publicized. And what happened was I won the case. I had Carmen Catino, who was a lawyer friend of mine, and this Mr. Norton, who was another. I had sort of like 2 very good lawyers, and we had a blind judge. Blind. In Rolling Meadows, I don't know if he's still there. I know he was a popular man there. And I dressed up in a suit. I was respectable. And we disproved him because what was found out is you can't drive 75 miles an hour on 3 tires without swerving and crashing. And I had a little bit more than you should, but I wasn't drunk by any stretch of the imagination. He stopped me because of what he heard and what he thought. And I ended up winning that case. The other case, deserved, got a DUI. It was stupid. And, it was just something that I shouldn't have done. I mean, when you do it the second time, you're a dummy. So I take full responsibility for that. But I quit drinking 17 years ago after having a long run of drinking. I was 14. I mean, I really started drinking when I was 8 or 9 because my father would leave his beer on the table in the front room overnight, and then he'd have his coffee in the morning. He'd leave that there. And then I'd get up to go to school, 9, 10, 11 years old. I'd take the sip of what was left of the beer. I'd drink his coffee every day, and it was ice cold. It was cold. So I'd go to school wired. But I don't know if that started anything, but all I know is I started drinking on a regular basis when I was 14, 15 years old, like a lot of kids in the neighborhood. Our neighborhood was filled with guys that had alcohol problems and stuff like that. And, we've lost a lot of guys that I used to know that were my own age. And I decided to stop drinking, not because I went to, and I drank all the way. I mean, when we used to go to New Orleans, to Vegas, on remotes, but I never drank before a show. I was always ready. Never drank before a softball game. Always ready. But I went to the doc. One night I was at Gillies and Tavern on Rush with my buddy Ira Rosenberg, who was 54 years old at the time. And we were partying a little bit, and he died the next morning. And he came home, and they said he died in his sleep. And I went to see my doctor, who I've known for 40 years. I said, Doc, if I keep drinking like I'm drinking, I'm 54, how long would I live? And he says, well, you got good constitution, man. You've been blessed. I've known you for a long time. Your liver's perfect. How is that? I go, I don't know. He said, 67, 68. Your dad died when he was 64. I stopped that day. And I'm 71. I said, no way. I got myself in shape. I said, I want to last in the business. I want to continue to do good work. And in fact, now I'm better than I ever was because I'm not cloudy all day and not feeling like I have the flu. I think as you look back, is there something you changed? Probably not. You knew you were having fun. We had a good time, but we traveled in a crew, 5, 6, 7 guys, Knuckles, Fritzy, Jimmy Cavall, sometimes Jesse Rogers. We went on trips, had fun, uh, travel with the ladies, BB, but she wasn't a drinker. And when I went out, we had a bar in my bar. I never drank in my house. I was always out. So my advice to everybody, don't do it. And now marijuana is legal. And if I had to do all over again, I probably would have done that, because I found out that if you smoke marijuana, from what I've seen, nobody wants to get in a fight. Nobody wants to start any trouble. Everybody seems pretty mellow. You know what I mean? But that just wasn't the way it was. And marijuana was illegal. You watch that show Cops now, on some of these stations, they're busting people for marijuana in 2012, 2014. So you stayed away from that. And I think now that it's legal, I think more people are turning to that than they are to booze.
Mike, did you at the time when you were drinking and when you saw your doctor and in the years past, did you say to yourself, I am or was an alcoholic?
Never. I always thought alcoholics went to meetings. I was a drunk. Okay. And I wasn't always, what's funny is, Al, when you hang out 4 nights a week times 50, okay, and then there's, the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving and you're going north side, you're going to have a good time. But when you are a public figure, you're going to have a couple beefs. Okay. So the thing I didn't like is if you had a beef with somebody, or if somebody in our crew had a beef with somebody, whether we were on the north side place, south side, downtown, you really, when you had a beef, there'd be people watching. So the next thing you know, you walk into a place, they go, hey, I hear you're a problem drinker. And I hear you, if you have 2 in 1 year and you're drinking 4 nights a week, and it's not always your fault. And it's somebody that might be envious, might be jealous, maybe doesn't like what they hear on the radio. I was always out. So I sort of adopted the Harry Carey thing.
Everybody says how many games I broadcast, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know the number of games I was really blind.
Hey, Harry,
out of my mind, I can hardly keep my eyes open.
I don't think Carey ever had people getting in his face, but I've had people sit in the booth when me and B were out at Gale Street Inn, just sit in the booth. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Stuff like that. That was cool. But if I had to do all over again, I'd probably do the same thing because I knew what I was doing. The only time, I'll tell you what, the only reason I wouldn't, because the 17 years now have been my greatest years. Not because the scoring years were great. Okay. But there was pressure. There was maybe all sorts of things that you got that you never had before. You let your celebrity get out of whack. It happens to everybody a little bit and some a lot. I was somewhere in the middle. I never thought, I went into a liquor store one night on Kilbourne and Belmont, okay, with a couple guys. We got a 6-pack. Some guys recognize us. They're playing wiffle ball out on the street. We stayed for 2 hours. I was at the height of my career, playing wiffle ball in the street at 11 o'clock at night on Kilbourne and Belmont. You know what I'm saying? So I never thought it was better than anybody else. I was just me, the way I've always been. But the drinking, if I had to do one thing, my wife was BB. She never tried to change me. She wasn't happy with me. It was like any other marriage. You're drinking too much. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Don't blow your career. Why would you do this? How did you get a DUI? She had to pick me up one night. There was 10 different times that she could have, like today, for a lot of the girls, I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't know if there's the patience. My wife's got tremendous patience. She said, I see something in you, but until you see something in you, you're going to keep spinning your wheels. And I stopped spinning my wheels 17 years ago. So I'm one of the lucky ones. I straightened out before it was too late.
I'll never forget listening to the Score Sports Radio many years ago, and Dan McNeil saying, Mike has the absolute perfect wife for him.
Yeah, I did.
I can't see any other woman being able to deal with Mike the way BB does. She keeps him growing.
She loves everybody. Everybody. Anybody that thinks BB has had anything to do with anything bad that would ever happen. I mean, she could have walked out 10 times. I mean, I'll be home at 6. I'd be home at 9. You know, I mean, I was a complete tool. I was not raised in her environment. It took her some time. She changed me just by being her. She didn't tell me quit drinking. I used to tell her I'm going to go on the wagon, and she wouldn't believe me. So then the one time I come home, I talked to the doctor. I'm going on the wagon. I'm quitting for good. She didn't believe me. Well, she did believe me, but she had heard it before. 17 years ago. I still don't know how I did it. I make Tino Antonacci at Pasta we'd be there at 1, and I'm just gone, with my buddies. And somebody go, he's going to go to work tomorrow? He says he'll not only go to work, he'll be the best in town. He'd win money. He'd drive me home 2:30. He'd bet people the next morning I'd be on. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to WSCR Radio in Chicago. And I'll tell you what, Jigs, we're ready to go. Jesse Rogers, hey, good to see you, my friend. I'll tell you what, Candy Maldonado popping up last night in the last inning. That wasn't good, Jigs. I mean, I'd be like this until the light went on. And then my love for what I do. I never did this for money. That's why I made it. If you do it for money, you're not going to make as much. If you do it for love and sports, before my wife, sports was my first love, period. If it wasn't for sports, I'd have nothing. My mom used to tell me, hey, too bad you can't make money at this. Too bad you get F's on your report card. Too bad, my dad would say, too bad you're going to be a bum. You're never going to amount to nothing. My counselor telling me you're not getting out of Sentinel you're never getting a diploma. You ain't worth the shit. Told Fritzy that too. We both got basically to get kicked out of a public school isn't easy. Okay. And we basically, he went to the racetrack. I think I went to the beach, and I never worried about it, but then I did. Then you go, what the hell am I going to do? Then I met B. So everything, I was very lucky. I count my blessings every day. So, and I didn't always do that. You know what I mean, Elder? You don't know when you're young and you're chasing. You know what I mean? You want to get that dream.
Yeah.
Or you want to build something for yourself, or you want to grind away. You don't have time. Now I look up and I see a bird. I go, there's a bird. You know what I mean? I never saw a bird for a long time. I never saw a bird. I go, there's a bird. There's a nest. You know what I mean? There's a cloud. Hey, there's some flowers. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
I want to take you back now to an interview that you and Jigs did with Mickey Mantle, and he was promoting something about alcoholism.
We're visiting with Mickey Mantle, Hall of Famer, former New York Yankee, wore the pinstripes proudly. The thing that I think that has really hit home with a lot of people is that you don't remember a lot of it now. And that basically you say if you would have taken better care of yourself, you probably could have hit maybe 650 home runs. You don't have any regrets. I know that. You may have regrets about the drinking and stuff like that. But as far as your career goes, you had fun. You had fun with Billy Martin, with the guys. Do you have any regrets about that, or would you do it all over again, even though you're going through this right now?
Well, looking back on it right now, I could have still had as much fun as I did with Billy and Whitey and Hank and Moose and all the guys.
Mm-hmm.
I could have had as much fun and still not have hurt myself as bad as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, though, it didn't really get really bad for me until the last 10 years. I mean, I drank during my playing and everything,
mm-hmm.
and I was stupid not to do my exercises, and that's what I try to tell the kids, if you only got one body and take care of it,
What were you thinking at the time of the interview when Mickey is basically encouraging people to stop drinking or to be careful with their drinking. Did you reflect on yourself when you were hearing one of your kid heroes talk about alcoholism?
I think seeing him up at the podium, even though I did interview him on radio, and I mean, he's legendary. The nun would roll the TV in every October. Every October. Sister Mary Francis Rita, Sister Mary Accarda, Sister Mary Anella, every nun. It was like clockwork. The Yankees are on in October, and the nuns wanted to watch the game more than the kids. Okay, even though I couldn't believe it. Hey, man, I'm not going to get a slap today. I'm going to get to watch New York Yankees play the San Francisco Giants in 1962. So I saw this. And to see Mantle like that, yeah, you learn. And then you start seeing people that I got in trouble as soon as I read My Wicked, Wicked Ways as a child. I've only read a couple books in my life, but I saw Robin Hood. I saw Seahawk. I saw Captain Blood. I saw Errol Flynn. I read My Wicked, Wicked Ways. And I was already 12 or 13, hyper as energized. I wanted to make something of myself, but I also loved his stories with the girls and all the nonsense. I said, that sounds appealing to me. And that's the first guy. I mean, when as a child, your formative years are 1 to 12. My formative years were garbage. I'll just be honest with you. I didn't listen. I did what I wanted for the most part. I was like them kids on the 30s or 40s flicks, running in Little Italy down the street. Errol Flynn and then Mickey Mantle. And some of these things were glorified in the 50s and 60s. Here's Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, and Toots Shores. Here's Joe Namath. I mean, 69, I'm 16 years old. Who's the number one star in America? Huh? The Bachelor? Who gets Ann Margaret? Who owns a bar? Who drinks and parties? And on Sundays whips everybody's ass. These are our influences as kids, just like movies. So you start to adapt some of their ways. And then you start to like what you're doing. So when I interviewed Mickey, I knew I was drinking, but I never thought I had a drinking problem because I showed up. I've been working. You can look into it. This is my 32nd year in broadcasting. I've never taken a sick day. Never. In radio. Never took a sick day on Fox. Never took a sick day on this. I worked 16 years at the Score. Never took a sick day. Ever. Never took it. My dad told me, now this is my dad who poured me a drink at 15 because he was scared of drugs. Say, try this. It's J&B. I go, what is that? I'm 15. He goes, it's scotch. Now, I don't know if he was trying to discourage me from drinking because when I tasted it, I just, but who does that? Whose dad does that? And I love my dad, but I think that, nowadays he'd probably be in a little bit of trouble, but I just had one sip and I didn't like it. So I think he was okay with that. But no, years down the line, I was drinking 6, 7 of those JB and waters, and stuff like that. Mickey Mantle losing his liver. I mean, it's stuff like that. If you have any common sense that you start to have it process in your mind. But the one thing I did, Aldo, that some of my friends did, not anybody that I'd travel with, but people I've known, and you know them too. I'm sure your guys in your crew. I never did hard drugs. I think if you do hard drugs and drink, you're doomed. You're doomed. You can't. You just can't. And I think if it's one or the other, I was choosing drinking. I think I made the right move. I think to do drugs, I could never have done my job. I would have taken time off. But like I said, I could have been a better husband. I think that when you drink, it's not that you don't have good morals. I have tremendous morals. I have good principle. Anybody knows me knows that. But when you drink, you're a different person. Yeah, that's the way it is. Period.
I'd like to stay on the topic of your dad, because one of the things that you shared with me privately is
Right.
that seeking his approval of you and your career, because he was tough on you when you were a child.
Sure.
And so once you're at the score and you're a celebrity throughout all of Chicago, and many parts of the nation are talking about what you are doing at the score and at the radio station, he saw you blossom. Tell me what that reaction from your dad was, and then also take it to his last days.
Okay, my dad was a shake hands guy. He never hugged us. I never got a hug from my dad. Shake hands, pat you on the back, maybe. Maybe. My mom wasn't either. So my mom to this day says to me, instead of saying, son, I'm so proud of you. How did you, she goes, my mom's like, I call her the low gangster. She's 94. How did you pull this off? That's what she says to me on the score. I said, I don't know. And my dad couldn't register it. My dad all of a sudden says, I told my buddies I'm going to be on, George Commodus will tell the story. We're at Edison Park Inn one night. And I go, hey, guys, there's like 12 of the guys, the Saints, my buddies from the time we were kids. And they know I'm not we were all BS artists as kids. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Yeah, everybody threw some BS around. But everybody has known each other for years, and everybody grew together, and everybody knows. So I had my hot dog stand and everything, and I said to them, I'm going to be on the radio. I'm going to have my own radio show. Not one of them believed me. Get the fuck out of here. What do you mean you could have a radio show? Yeah, I'm working with Dan Jiggets. We're going to be on every day. When? I go on January 2nd, it's supposed to be. It was like November. They go, what are you talking about? I go, I got a sports show. And then they were stunned. Okay. That's my dad, too. My dad goes, excuse me? I go, I'm going to be on the radio. And all of a sudden, I was on the radio. And my dad, no good for you. No. But I know my mom told me my dad listened. And then he'd go to the hardware store. Don, your kid's on the radio. Aren't you at home listening? Here. Because he'd buy supplies. Half price. Tell Mike to give us a shout out. That's when my dad started becoming interested in this whole thing. And then the Ditka show. And Terry Boers, they would do a show. Tom Scher, McNeil, and I finally got to do the show. Me. You're going to have the stage by yourself with Mike Ditka. You watched him play as a kid. You shook his hand when he came out of the Wrigley Field clubhouse, on Waveland, when he used to wait for the Bears. Now you're going to host a show in your neighborhood, basically, not far, on Cumberland at Ditka's O'Hare. I go, you guys got to come. My dad goes, to what? The Mike Ditka show. And my dad goes, the Mike Ditka show? He goes, yeah. It's going to be at O'Hare, Cumberland O'Hare, Ditka's. So I get them in. I get tickets. They get a table with 10 other people. And my mom goes, what the heck's going on? And they go, well, she goes, boy, this is nice. And they met some people at the table. It was a long table. And they go, my mom goes, boy, the coach is really popular. The coach is really popular. Look at everybody's here to see him. And the guy across the table goes, Miss, we're not here to see him. We're here to see Mike North. And she goes, you're here to see Mike North. He's my son. My dad goes, yeah, he's my son. Ding, ding, ding. Time of our lives. But that's when it first hit my dad. And he went home. He was, what he was most impressed with? He was a great electrician. He was most impressed with my house, my new house. Mm-hmm. Look at that electrical unit. Look at that electric box. That's what let's go down to the basement. Let's look at that. It was a mansion being built on Park Ridge. I bought a frame. He'd come over. I had 12 rooms. I had a fully stocked, beautiful basement, pool table, arcade games, everything. He goes, let's go take a look at the electrical box and make sure they did this right. And he said they did, so everything was cool. And our relationship was always okay. But he could have been a better dad, and I could have been a better son. He had a stroke, and he had told me before. He had told me for years, the one thing I'm afraid of is a stroke. That's the one thing I never want. And he had one. And he says, beforehand, he told me, if I have a stroke and I can't function, and usually people will fight, if I have a stroke and I can't function, I'll let you know. I go, if you can't function, how are you going to let me know? He said, I'll figure something out. So he has a stroke, and he's paralyzed on one side, and we're talking, and we're trying to make a decision. The doctors are trying to tell us, hey, he's going to be basically a vegetable. That's how bad it was. Or he's going to turn into one. And he'll be paralyzed. And I told him, me and my mom talked, and we remember what he said. But he said he'd give me a sign. And then I come back in, and I go, I don't know what to do, Dad. I don't know what to do. And he looked at me and he went, with the wink. And that was it. I knew that was the sign. And so that was a time, I think, you know what, he ended up in Audi homes and everything else when he was a kid. He came from a divorced family. So he didn't have the greatest child life either. So, but he was married for 45 years to my mom. He raised 3 kids, always a warm 3 squares, bed, the whole ball wax. So no complaints.
And your mom, your relationship with her today, how old is she? And what's your relationship with her today?
She's 94. She's out of her mind, man. She's something else. She's sharp as ever. She's a funny lady, stubborn. I got my gift of gab from her. I got my toughness really from her, to be honest with you. She don't take no BS. We try to get her to do certain things. If she don't want to do it, she's not doing it. I understand that type of thing. So, yeah, she's great. I mean, we have a better relationship now than we did when we were kids. She still doesn't know how she raised us. She can't even remember. She asked me the other day, where did you guys used to keep your shoes? These are answers I got to give her now. Where'd you keep your shoes when you came home? Mom, in the hallway. How did you guys raise yourselves? She asked me these questions. You guys were never home. I go, Mom, that's when everybody ran, So, yeah, she's great.
We've got more Raging Mouth, the Mike North story, coming up after these messages.
I'm with owner, president, Grand Poopa of Rahl Jewelers in Hoffman Estates on Barrington Rd. My buddy Brad Gams. And Brad, first of all, it's good to see you.
It's great
Thanks
to see you,
for
Mike.
sponsoring Raging Mouth.
It's my pleasure.
And Brad, engagement rings are big. This is the time of year. Let me ask you a question. Somebody gets a quote from another store, franchise store, maybe a family store. Your family operated 41 years. What do they have to do to compare prices with you?
We typically can beat the price before we even know what they got quoted.
Okay.
They will come in and they'll go to a mall store or even another independent and tell me exactly what they're looking at. Color, clarity, weight, cut, which is also important in a diamond. And we look up to see what we have. And in more cases than not, a lot more cases than not, our price already is better than what they got quoted before they even tell me what they got quoted. So they're pleasantly surprised, and this is how we've maintained over 41 years, through referrals and repeat business. So being the fact that we're family owned and we do all our work on the premises, somebody can come in the morning, buy an engagement ring, and pick it up in the afternoon, and you can't do that at a mall store. You gotta wait 2 weeks, they gotta send things out, and they don't warranty what we do. We give a lifetime warranty. We polish the ring forever. We resize the ring if it needs to be resized. We replace a diamond if it falls out. You can't find that at every jewelry store.
That's him. That's my buddy Brad Gams, Rahl Jewelers. Barrington Road out in Hoffman Estates. You can see it because the place sparkles from miles away.
So I understand you're looking to maybe upgrade BB's engagement ring.
Wait. Hey, take it easy, Coppola, all right?
Fantastic. Okay, let's go back to the score. Tell me about the new management change that came to the score. Danny Lee sold his interest, and you had new management. What was your relationship with them like, and what led to the two of you parting?
Danny Lee sold after 4 years for $77 million. He sold XRT and the score, and I didn't know anything about it, and I thought I should have been told about it. Jeff Schwartz knew about it. Harvey Wells knew about it. All the management knew about it, but they didn't tell any of the talent. And I wasn't happy about that because it was my baby. It was my vision. I thought I should have been told, but I wasn't. Okay. I was paid. They took good care. Danny always took good care of me. I was happy for him and everything else. I just was upset at first that I wasn't told, but I let that go and got ready for different management teams to come in, Westinghouse, CBS, all corporate stuff. You know, we never did live reads. I refused to do live reads. I said, because I saw XRT doing it. And I said, you know what, live reads commercials are better, make the station sound better. You get some guy that can't, and I could always do live reads. I was fast. And we built a lot of good places that advertise with us. But I could do the live reads, but they'd record them. Hi, this is Mike North for Dakotas. Hi, this is Mike North for Miller Lite. Hi, this is Mike North for Jacobs Twin Buick. Hi, this is Mike North for Grossinger. Hi, this is Mike North for Gale Street Inn. Hi, all these great places. Hi, this is Mike North for this place, that place. And you do commercials. They wanted to do live reads. They started changing things. When you wanted to do something, you had to go in, talk to them. Then they had to call New York or Westinghouse at the time, Pittsburgh. So we were guys that were used to the mom and pop franchise. Okay, the family unit, where it was family, and it changed. The same people were there, but the hierarchy changed, and none of them were Mike North guys, I don't think. But I was the guy that was bringing in, and Jiggs and I at first were bringing in the bucks and everything else, and so was everybody else. So nobody started, but then they start tinkering with stuff, and then they start telling people stuff that isn't true, and then they start doing some shenanigans, stuff you never saw in the first place. Money is what happened with the money was Rod Zimmerman. God bless. I love Rod. I like Rod. I'd like to see Rod again. Rod negotiated with me for 6 months at the end of my 16th year. He says, we'll give you 3 years at $750,000 a year. Okay. There's people still saying I was nuts for doing this, but I read an article by Dan Patrick the other day. They did the same thing. They said, what happened is I said, I'm not going to do that. Dan, and in Zimmerman's defense, he negotiated with me for 6 months. We negotiated at a bowling alley. We went bowling. We tried everything. I said, I'll take the same pay I got now. I won't take a raise, but I'll take the same pay at 1.5. He goes, no, you'll take 750. I said, I'll never take 750. He says, yeah, you'll take 750. Are you kidding me? That's 750 grand. I go, yeah, but are you taking a pay cut? He goes, well, no. I go, well, why should I take a pay cut? It's because of me. You got the job. You wouldn't be here without me. That's what I told him. I'm willing to go to $1 million. I'll come down. Just tell me why. And then he said, well, 750 is the figure. Never once did he budge off to 750. So I'm figuring they either don't want me anymore or they actually think I'm going to take it, which was the latter, ended up being true. And it was for 3 years. And what happened was I went in there with a buddy. My brother-in-law is a financial advisor. And the day that Rod said, this is a take it or leave it deal. And my buddy Ken Leidecker, who's my brother-in-law, said, well, why can't Mike make the 750? Why are you cutting him? He goes, well, we don't think his numbers will be as good. Then why do you want him? You want him at a different price. He says, why don't we do this? Why don't we lay in bonuses? Well, the bonuses ended up being $2 million that I could have achieved. He goes, we don't have to do that. Throws the paper, just like what happened to Dan Patrick. Same thing. Take it or leave it. Boom. Gone. Walked out. So I'm dispelling the myth that the score never wanted me. The dumbest thing the score ever did was not taking me. Period. Okay? They can play whatever games they want. They've never been the same. Period. And you know what? Would I have stayed at the score my whole career? Hell yeah. But that wasn't meant to be. And they mistake me for somebody that did it for them, just for the money. And most of those guys at the time did do it for the money. You know, they got family. I didn't have a family. So all these guys, I understand why they did it for the money. But I knew if I took less money, and I predicted this would happen, the radio business, okay, when they get rid of the Sterns, the Dahls, the Russos, the Francesas, the Norths, they're cutting the pay. Nobody, I used to take home $40,000 a year, Al. Okay, with the hot dog stand. When I was at the score, I made $45,000 a month. Okay, I already got the toys. Now you're going to strong arm me? And I told Rod, we can come to a happy medium. It didn't work out. I'm fine. You know, like Ed Orgeron says, they said you only worked at LSU for 6 years. You made $17 million. He goes, well, I made $17 million. I only worked 6 years. That's my window. That's my window. I'm rich. That's what he said. Period. Did I want things, other things to go? I became an entrepreneur. I tried other things. Some worked and some didn't. That's what happens. Period. That's life. I play golf. That's the same way in golf. That's life. Ups and downs and all rounds. But I would have stayed at the score. I still love the score. You know, I work for ESPN. I love them too, but I love the score. Period.
Mike, do you think that some of the controversies that you were involved in, there was, besides the DUIs you mentioned, there was an incident with an allegation that you picked up prostitution. There was some comments that you made about a Mexican-American TV anchorman.
That was Antonio Mora. You can talk Antonio Mora.
Right. Do you think that those were part of the reason that perhaps management was playing hardball with you?
No, because Danny Lee owned it at that time. I think management would have played hardball. Danny Lee, I was with 6 guys. We were in a limo. We went down North Avenue after partying all night. And unfortunately, I was with Jesse Rogers, and Jesse didn't do anything. We didn't do anything. We got, we were exonerated for that, but they had a sting going and the limo stopped. You don't go out if you're going to go out looking for that type of action. You would imagine you wouldn't go with 6 people, and we got out of that, but that didn't come out for 3 weeks. I went to work every day with that hanging over my head. I was in jail all night for that. And that embarrassed my wife. That embarrassed my mom. That was a tough time. That was the worst night of my life. But then we got exonerated. But I felt bad for Jesse. Jesse didn't really do anything. Once they put the cuffs on me, I go, what the hell are you guys doing, man? We weren't doing anything. And I said a few other choice words. So I take full responsibility for that. But it ended up and our ratings went up. I mean, every time something happened, and I didn't want that to happen, believe me. And I thought that might be good. And Danny said, okay. But I was we were doing great. If I wasn't doing great, I wouldn't have had a job. I wouldn't have. And I wouldn't have blamed them, So yeah, that was a bad scene too. That was a bad scene. And that was not advised. That was a bad move on my behalf, saying, hey, let's go down this street to the limo driver. And then the limo driver slows down. But I take full responsibility for that. 1993, I think it was 93 or 94. I haven't been in trouble since.
I have.
I,
But this
I'm
is
in
about
trouble,
you,
but
man.
not that kind of trouble. My God. I mean, it was bad. And I felt bad.
What
But it happened. It happened. And I stayed in my basement for 3 weeks and listened to the Carpenters. I just listened to soothing music and said, what are you doing? This is going to come out. You're going to get in trouble. And I told Danny, though. I told Danny the next morning. He goes, all right, well, we'll see. I was wearing the same clothes. Jig says to me, Jig could tell it. I was hadn't shaved. My hair was messed up. You know, it was bad. It was bad news. I was bad news. I was bad news. Sorry, you don't put yourself in that position. So, you know, it took me about 10 hits in the head before I finally figured everything out. But the new management had different agendas, I think. They were management guys. Rod was a sales guy. But Rod had trouble with Bob Costas and other people. I knew this was going to be a battle. But I'm good with Rod. I don't know what happened to him. I told him I'd be around Chicago radio for a long time. He seemed to think that was the end of me, and it could have been, but it worked out.
When you left the score, can you take me
Yeah.
back to that time? And
Oh.
I'm interested in knowing what people said, the people that you worked with. And
Oh.
of course, so many of your fans were irate. I imagine had
Yeah.
to be really irate about it.
It
Take
was
me back to that
tough.
time.
It was tough. My buddies, some of them, not all, but these guys were all blue collar guys. But when I put it to them this way, they understood. I had buddies that worked for the city, bartender, insurance salesman, school teacher, Lee Auto Parts. I know where all my buddies worked. Okay, they all worked at different places and had mainly blue collar type jobs. And when they found out that I was quitting, a couple, are you out of your mind? You know, why are you quitting? Are you crazy? $750. I go, let me ask you something. How much you make? And at the time, one of them said 52. I said, would you take 25? They go, no. That's what they want me to do. Okay. That makes sense. But Mike, that's still great money. I go, that's not the point. Tell me why you want me to take the cut. And tell me why. You know, you want me for 3 years and you know I'm going to perform. You know, I show up every day. So once you explain it, but with the media, you couldn't explain it. You know, I was the guy that was on the outs, and then I started working on other things. And, you know, that's when Webio started, you know, that whole fiasco. And I worked with computers. I don't know how to work a computer, but I know how to make, as you know, money off computers. And it helped that I had my name off radio. But Webio was ahead of its time. And I got into that. And I met a guy named David Hernandez through Jeff Schwartz. And he says, there's this guy that's got nothing but money. He wants to do a station. I go, what kind of station? He wants you to advertise for him. He's got this place called Next Up Medical Staffing. What they did is they would take people that moved from one state to the other that were in the medical profession, and they would place them at hospitals. That was the ruse. We got on Comcast. I cut $1 million deals. You know, it was my idea to do this Comcast show with me and Dan Jiggets and Jen Patterson, who was fantastic. And you know what? I sold. And one of the people I sold to was David Hernandez and Next Up. There were people, the White Sox, he dealt with the White Sox. He dealt with the Bulls. He dealt with Comcast. He spent a lot of money. I took all of my guys. I said, guys, we're going to make history here. We're going to make history. I took George Hoffman, Jesse Rogers, Doug Buffon, Jay Hood. I mean, tons of guys. And for 6 months, we worked out of Morton Grove. The guy built the offices. I go, could it be? I told Jeff Schwartz that we finally found a guy that gets it. And we were looking forward to broadband being put into the radio. It was the plan of plans where eventually you'd be able, like on your phones now. I was the original. In fact, I talked at 2 tech conferences, one at Mangiano's with Drew Hayes, who was our program director. He goes, hey, there's a bunch of tech people that are going to be meeting at Mangiano's on Grand. 200 of them. I go, yeah. You want to be the guest speaker as the founder of Webio? Or do you want to, I go, yeah. And I talked. I was heralded. And then we found out down the line, and we had jiggets, that Hernandez was a fake. And when you went into his office, you had pictures of him playing in a Wisconsin uniform. We did our due diligence. We did our background check. But let me tell everybody, go and check out David Hernandez. There's a million of them. Okay. And it looked good. And then George Hoffman went to they sent George to Montreal, I think, or somewhere to cover a hockey game, playoff game. I mean, this guy spent money. And my plan was for all these guys to be independently wealthy at the end. And it was working out. And then I get called in from Comcast. And a guy named Phil Bedella was the boss with Greg Bowman. And he goes, you're fired. I go, what are you talking about? I'm fired. He says, David Hernandez doesn't want you anymore. He says you said something on the air that offended him. I go, David Hernandez, I think, has got a problem. I think there's a problem with what's going on with the money. I've been because we've had some guys have their phone shuts off. And we've had, phones aren't working and everything else. I think he's got a problem here. Oh, no, it's you. I go, what am I getting fired for? Because you said that something about, I was talking about Joseph as a carpenter. And I said, how many Jewish carpenters do you know? Jesus's father. I sell him jigs that. He got offended by that. That was BS. And he told everybody, all of my buddies, all the media guys, and they were in a different position than me. He called them all together. He said, don't tell Mike. And not one of them told me or B. And they all met with him. Doug Buffon, all of them. And I never held it against them because this was their livelihood. This was their career, and he was the money guy. Don't tell Mike because he'll come here. And that's what he didn't want. And every one of them, okay, I love them all. We were upset at first. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why wouldn't one of you tell us? The most guy I was upset with was Buffon. I sat next to the guy, and he never said a word. And they went behind my back, and they got burned. But you know what me and B did? We had them all to our house. We had some hors d'oeuvres, and I gave them all $2,000. I spent $64,000 that night because I knew it was because of me, regardless of how they acted and how they didn't tell us, because these guys were starting families. They had just left the score. They had left prime jobs. So I didn't blame them. I just wish I would have known. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway because they had already left the station. But the hires were so good. I hired Doug Glanville. What's he doing now? ESPN. Jesse Rogers. What's he doing now? ESPN. Jay Hood. What's he doing now? Morning radio. ESPN. I can go all night long with everybody. Doug got back in the game. But they screwed Doug around. NOB, they gave him less money. I know that. Doug used to tell me. BB was his agent. BB made Doug a lot of money. And there were other guys. I think there's a couple guys that I feel bad about that were just starting out. Matt Weber's one of them. We love Matt. We haven't talked to him for years. But it sidetracked him. I don't know what's happened to Matt. I hope he's doing well. I hope every guy I worked with is doing well. But that was bad too. But he ended up doing 16 years. And everybody at the station was ripping me, but they never had me on.
Hernandez fires you. When did the FBI become involved, and for what reason did the
Well, what
FBI
happened was
become
when I
involved?
was being fired, okay, by Comcast, by Phil Bedella, who works for Jerry Reinsdorf in the Chicago White Sox. Now, how funny is that? And so he didn't suffer any consequences, apparently, except his TV career was over because he made a mistake. As he was firing me, they got a call. You talk about timing?
The Chicago businessman missing tonight after being accused of running a Ponzi scheme that cheated investors out of millions of dollars. His name, David Hernandez, and he has ties to Chicago radio.
Now, this Chicago businessman had partnered with radio personality Mike North on an innovative radio program through the web. They brought in some big radio personalities, paid them some big bucks, and those personalities say that they didn't know anything was wrong until yesterday.
The FBI was breaking David Hernandez's office's door down. Not mine. They investigated me, I guess. They said he doesn't know anything about this. I was a victim like everybody else. And so were the investors of Next Step. It was like a pyramid scheme. I was used to sell the product. You know what happened, Al? He knew I'd be believable, that I would sell his product. And I would help him carry his scheme without me knowing. And you know what happened? I was so good. He had an office downtown by City Hall. They couldn't handle the orders. People were calling him, going, "Can you place me here?" They didn't know. I heard half the workers were playing solitaire. He had plants. It was the grifters in a nutshell. I discovered it the day I was fired, but it was a little late.
Were you ever charged?
Never. But the damage was done. I was left holding the bag, and that's fine. But let me just say this. The Chicago White Sox, Jerry Reinsdorf, a lot of guys made money off him. A lot of guys. Okay? And I was left holding the bag. But that Monday, I had been let go on Friday. My lawyer, Steve Harris, who did an average job. I thought that we could have gotten more, but you know what he did do? What BB wanted. You got to get back on the air. I go, you didn't do anything, Mike. We didn't do anything. Get back on the air. So Steve Harris did a good job. He got us back on the air. And that Monday, when they found out I was wrongly fired, okay, Reinsdorf was on the show. Wirtz was on the show. Jim Henry was on the show. They showed up at 7 a.m. because they knew they fucked up. And I was on for another 6 months, and then they let us go. It was a great show, and it should still be on. It should still be on. It was wacky. It was, but that whole thing was a bad scene. And, you know, that's a company I could have sued, but you don't sue nobody. You know why, Eldo? Because it doesn't do any good. You spend a lot of time, a lot of money, you know, you might lose. You could settle. I know people settle. They were telling me sue and settle. I go, no. I want to work. You do that, you never work in this business again. You got to take your lumps, and that's the way it was, period. But anybody that thinks anybody in the media is squeaky clean, that's not true. And you know that. You worked in the media for a long time. And that was a tough period. But, you know, I'm glad I discovered it, but it was a little bit too late. But he was in the corner, and they did some investigation on us, me and BB. You would never put your buddies in your career through that. I was making good money. It didn't matter. I wouldn't do that, you know, but it was a hell of a setback. That's all I'm going to tell you. And I'm glad I'm still friends with most of those guys now, because I think they know now what happened.
But it had to hurt when that happened.
For Jesse and for Jay, all these guys, it hurt. But it hurt both sides. You know, we were misunderstood. I never misunderstood them. You know, everybody's got different needs, and I understood the desperation, and George had his phone cut off, and, you know, Hernandez convinced him. He was pretty good. He was pretty good.
Indeed, he was. Well, on our next episode of Raging Mouth, we're going to talk about Mike's bounce back, going over to Fox Sports Radio. We'll talk about a number of other topics. But before
We'll talk about some fun things.
Yes, we'll talk about some fun things. I want to talk about one fun thing before we leave. Let's leave this show with a fun note, and that is during your years at the Score, when you left, people missed you. But and they missed BB, of course, because she would pop in and you would talk so frequently about her. But there was one person, so to speak, that appeared on every show and was beloved by hundreds of thousands of people, and that was Licorice. Tell us what your dog meant to the show and meant to you as a dog lover.
Hi, I'm Mike North, and this is my dog, Licorice. You know what? It's her 7th birthday. I couldn't be prouder. She's been a good luck charm to me and my wife, Phoebe, for a long, long time.
Wow. We love our dogs, and Licorice was our first dog. We have our second dog was Lucky. Our third dog was Lotto. Licorice, we had the hot dog stand. We had just moved to Palatine, so I went to Animal Kingdom, which was on Milwaukee in California. They used to have puppies in there, and there was like 8 gold puppies and 1 black puppy. And it was weird. I said, he was moping around, and he was the black puppy. I said, give me the black puppy. I started holding him. He licks my face. I go, we'll take him home. We take him home. Never had a dog before. Crazy dog, lived to be 18. And I wanted something for our show to signify if you were a first-time caller. And back in the day, now you can get dog barking. You just press a computer, dog barking. We had to bring Licorice in. And if you ever see the MGM lion, the MGM lion was brought in to growl. They didn't have sound effects. Well, we brought Licorice into the studio, and we'd say, speak or bark, and we'd hold a treat. He'd go, look, and we recorded it. And for every first-time caller, we would use the barking. We would do the barking, and it just hit off. He made money, or she made money. Licorice got a gig at Scott's Pet Shop to make an appearance with me. I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying? I show up with the dog, and then he sees the birds in the cage and went after him. I mean, the whole thing was crazy. The Licorice would show up at certain events. When I came home, I never had, we had one dog when we were kids. He got hit by a car, got loose, and we never, we felt bad. But when I got my dogs, that opened up my heart. I think dogs bring out the best in you, as you know. And you learn from your dogs, that, you always say to yourself, if people were like dogs, we'd have no wars, and that's how I feel about my dog. And I loved them. I loved her. And the 2 boys I had Lucky, and now I got Lotto. He's doing great. He's 3.5. And he goes, where do you disappear to every day, with this Aldo guy, But I mean, and you know what? I mean, it's just been a crazy. When I think of the things, I think I know that we're probably over time, but to tell you the breadth, I had an actor on, I forget his name, and he said there had to be a hell of a transition. He goes, tell me about what it was like. I go, all I can tell you is this: in 1982. I worked for the Chicago Park District, and I cleaned up after the Pope said Mass in Grant Park. We were sent there, our crew. They would take crews from all over and clean the park. I mean, I found TVs. I mean, it was crazy. People camped there for 2 days. In 1992, in the same spot, I hosted the Bulls on WSCR. Appearance at Grant Park for the Score. 10 years later, I cleaned the park, and then I worked with Ron Gleason as the 2 guys that handled the play-by-play of when the Bulls came up at Grant Park for the first one. So that tells you how crazy life is, and if you keep busting your ass, maybe something good will happen.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back very, very soon with another episode of Raging Mouth, the Mike North story, brought to you by our friends at Rahl Jewelers.